Hi, this is Juan from JuanTutors.com. Welcome to my totally free office hours. Today we're working on the August 2016 New York Algebra 1 Common Core Regents exam, problem number 30. If you are looking for these questions, you can find them freely available online. Go to nysedregents.org. Click on the appropriate tabs, and all the tests are freely available to you right there. So here's the problem. The graph below shows two functions, f of x and g of x. State all the values of x for which f of x equals g of x. And there are the two graphs. A lot of kids do get this question wrong, but this is a problem that hopefully you will get it right after this explanation. Try to pause it, think about it first, do it on your own, and then see if your answer matches my answer. Okay. I was talking to a student earlier today, and I was realizing that she didn't know why a question like this has a fairly easy answer once you know what they're asking for. Here's the thing: students struggle so much on graphs now that because graphs really have fell by the wayside, they're barely taught properly anymore. That the test makers can't ask you difficult questions with graphs anymore. They have to ask you questions about just the coordinates, and that's about it. So we have to know what the graph actually represents. I asked this girl, what does this graph represent? And she actually wasn't sure, which is a very appropriate response. It's the most common response. A lot of students don't know what the graph is. So if you know what the graph represents, great. This is what the graph, what the definition is. So the graph of a function for example, y equals f of x, is a set of ordered pairs x comma y satisfying the equation y equals f of x. Meaning what? So meaning if the point is on the graph, then that x and y pair satisfies the equation. So a point is on the graph if and only if it satisfies on the graph of y equals f of x, if and only if it satisfies the equation f of x. Okay, if and only if. Why is that like the thing to know? Wow, right? Because I didn't say anything major. Well, look at this. I'm just going to almost repeat myself. A point is on, so this is like the second, almost like a second level to them, but it's not so high level. So a point is on the graph of y equals g of x if and only if it satisfies the equation y equals g of x. It's like, wow, I just repeated myself. So what? So this is the major point that allows you to do so many problems, not just on this, but in geometry, in Algebra 2, trigonometry, in pre-calc, in calc, believe it or not, and on the SATs. Well, how about the ACTs? A lot of the questions will simply just be asking you this, or will ask you to use this as a tool. This is the thing. So a point is in the intersection of the graphs when, if and only if Well, if and only if it's on the graph, if it's on the first graph, so it has to satisfy f of x, and it's on the second graph, so it has to satisfy y equals g of x, which means it satisfies both. So if and only if the point it satisfies both equations, y equals f of x and y equals g of x. And this now seemingly obvious statement is like the crux of this problem and at least 3 problems on the geometry regions and also the algebra 1 regions, and also at least 4 or 5 problems on the ACT, and more than that if you consider it as a useful tool in very many problems. Many more problems, like a circle is drawn on a graph paper, a triangle is drawn on a graph paper, you want to find the coordinates of an intersection. In this case, these points are the points that are in the intersection, and this point is -3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this point is 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3. So state the values of x for which f of x equals g of x. The answer for this is 1 and -3. Now, we just went through a whole conversation to teach. Not that you have to write all that stuff. Really, all you have to do in this problem is write this, and you've got 2 points. This is one of those cases where just giving the answer is enough. So that's it. 1 and -3, and you get 2 points. Nice, right? Sweet. Let's go on to this perfectly valid, correctly leveled problem for Algebra 1, even for Algebra 2, and then this question will also be asked on the ACTs and other tests as well. So the graph below shows 2 functions, f of x and g of x. State the interval or intervals for which g of x is less than f of x. Pause the video, try it on your own, and when you're finished, unpause. If you found that you got the same solution as us, click the like button. If this is helpful, subscribe, and let your school friends know that these videos are available, because the way we're able to provide these for free is by providing them to students like you. And that's why we do it. We love to do it, and we have fun doing it. So state the values state the intervals for which f of x equals g of x. So in this case, this is talking about x intervals. Okay, that's clear by the wording. So how do you know when f of x equals g of x, or g of x is less than f of x? So g of x is less than f of x if and only if. So again, the points x, y are points that on the graph are points that satisfy or don't satisfy the function, the equation. So the y coordinate represents the value of g of x or the value of f of x, or if it's on neither graph, it represents the value of neither f nor g. So g of x is less than f of x if and only if the value of g of x is less than the value of f of x, but the value are represented by the y coordinates. So as a result, this is only if and only if the graph of g of x is below the graph of f of x. So g of x is less than f of x if only if the graph of g of x is below the graph of f of x. Okay, so I'm going to split this up into parts here. So this is where f of x equals g of x. Here, this is where f of x equals g of x. Here, over here, the graph of g of x is below the graph of f of x. So here, g of x is less than f of x. And here, g of x is above, the graph of g of x is above the graph of f of x. So though g of x is greater than f of x, I should really write that below. G of x is greater than f of x. And here also the graph of g is above the graph of x. So g of x is greater than f of x. So the interval, oops, just do that. Okay, the interval is from here, -3 to 1. So the answer is -3 to 1. With parentheses, because -3, at -3, g of x is equal to f of x, so it's not less. And the same goes for the point x equals 1. So this is your answer. Done. Also, another valid solution, just x such that -3 is less than x is less than 1. However you want to write it, that's up to you. Okay, that's it. That's it. We're all set. So hopefully you got it. I believe in you. Keep working at it. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video starting right now.